I was just reading in Psalm 142, very emotional words. I cry aloud to the Lord. It's to the Lord I lift my voice up for mercy. I pour out my complaint before Him. Before Him I tell Him of my trouble. You know what's interesting about these words? It has a little introduction. It says, this is a song of David, get this, when he was in a cave. Well, David was in a cave a lot. But there was a time when he went to a place called Gath, when he went down in a hole that was nothing short of just an emotional prison. There in Gath, the very hometown of Goliath. Now, put those pieces together. David had beaten Goliath when he was a very young man, say 13 years old. Now he's older, he's a young adult. He's not yet king. He's by himself, and he goes to Gath, and it's there that he becomes very much afraid. He began to act like a madman. He was crazy. He was clawing at the gates. He was letting saliva drip down his beard. He just made a mess of himself. So much so that the king kicked him out of Gath, which was exactly what David wanted. When he had escaped, he took a long walk. He came over to the Caves of Adullam. Now, by the time he finished his time in that cave, he'd come out of his emotional cave, and he was a changed man. And he literally wrote a psalm that said, never again will I go back to the way I was. While David was hiding in the Caves of Adullam, he was only a short walk away from the valley of Elah. In that valley, he had beaten Goliath just a few years earlier. But in the Caves of Adullam, David now made one of the most important decisions of his life. He threw off his attitude of fear that he had found in Gath and recommitted his life to the courageous faith he had known in the valley against Goliath. We know he did this because of the words of Psalm 34. For it was here, the psalm says, in this environment and at this point in his life, when David had his change of heart. Well, I think we can see why David would have hidden in a cave. It's hard to get in. Therefore, when an enemy was chasing him, if the enemy dared come in such a place, it would be easy to defeat the enemy. I think David felt very secure in a place like this. But I'll tell you one more reason that David felt secure. The Bible says that when David was in the Caves of Adullam, and that's where we are, 400 men came to David. And they got around him and they gave him their support. In effect, they said, David, you're our man. You're our leader. Wherever you go, that's where we're going to go. Whatever you tell us to do, that's what we'll do. David will die for you if that's what it takes, because we believe in you. You know, when he left this place, he was completely out of his emotional cave. He was on top of the world. And it wasn't long before he became king. And as a matter of fact, with that kind of support, with that kind of community, he actually became the greatest king in Israel's history. Well, I understand more than ever why David felt secure when he came to the Caves of Adullam. And I think I understand how he came out of that emotional cave he had been in at Gath. Remember, he had been so afraid. Now you think about the progression. He'd been afraid at Gath. He came to Adullam and probably passed through the valley of Elah, where he had beaten Goliath so many years ago. And he reconnected with that strong faith, that complete trusting God kind of faith. He gets here, he gets community around him. And the Bible tells us that Psalm 34 was written after this experience. Listen to the words. He said, I will extol the Lord at all times. His praise will always be on my lips. In a sense, he's saying, I'm never going back there again. He said, my soul will boast in the Lord. Let the afflicted hear and rejoice. Come, worship the Lord with me. Let us exalt His name together. For I sought the Lord, and He answered me, and listen to this part, He delivered me from all my fears. Not my giants, not the king that's chasing me, not the problem of today, but I found out God can deliver me from all my fears. Finally, David was hardened enough, he had been tested enough to go out and be the king God had meant for him to be all along. It's an amazing story of how David hid in the cave and how he overcame that emotional cave. That truth is still here for us today. Choose to extol the Lord, to give Him the praise, and forget about your fears. I'm Andy Cook for the Christian Television Network.